Greetings everyone, welcome to my review of IDW Sonic the Hedgehog issue 6. Before we begin, I'd like to mention something someone in the comments section of the previous video pointed out. The outfit Mr. Tinker is wearing is reminiscent of Eggman's pajamas from an early concept design, especially with the coloring, the collar, and the slippers. Thank you Jambastian for sharing this, and I encourage everyone to point out the more obscure references if I don't find them myself. Some of you who are joining us for the first time might be wondering, why am I calling Eggman Mr. Tinker? Well, let me explain. And spoilers from here on out. In the previous issue, Sonic enlisted the aid of the Chaotix to track down Eggman, still believing he was the reason the Badniks are organizing again. They found him in a village with no memory of his previous life, going by the moniker Mr. Tinker, due to him fixing things for said village. Don't worry, the villagers and the Chaotix thoroughly checked to see if he remembers anything. Sonic didn't buy it at first, until he witnessed Mr. Tinker's reaction during a Badnik attack. Sonic seemed cool with Mr. Tinker until Eggman Land was brought up, and wouldn't you know it, that's when Shadow and Rouge arrived. Yeah, Shadow and Rouge overheard the Eggman Land thing, and apparently Shadow wants to handle it the only way he knows how. Intimidation plus violence. Sonic mentioning the memory loss doesn't sway him. Sonic keeps blocking Shadow, and soon it gets to the point where the two are fighting each other again. In any time, any media, or any continuity, these two will always butt heads at some point. The Chaotix want to help Sonic, but change their minds after seeing how fast the combatants are fleeing the village. Hey, I'll give them props for wanting to help Sonic. It does free them to confront Rouge on bringing Shadow here. Shadow was already hunting down Eggman, and will hurt those in his way, including the Chaotix. So Rouge reveals that yes, she was the anonymous tipper, which gave the detectives enough time to investigate Mr. Tinker and bring Sonic to the village before she helped Shadow find him here. Back over to the Sonic and Shadow fight, which honestly looks more like a race, the Blue Hedgehog tries to tell the Ultimate Life Form, yeah, Eggman's done terrible things over the years, but he's done some good things like help prevent the Ark from destroying the world. Alright, Shadow does not want to be reminded of that. Well, what about the time the Black Arms invaded and Eggman held him off long enough for the heroes to win the day? While Shadow's not happy with that memory too, he's more upset that Sonic's suggesting leniency for Eggman after making Sonic suffer, and the multiple world domination attempts. Sonic turns it around on Shadow, that he almost destroyed him and tried to obliterate a planet. I'll talk more about this comparison in a bit. Sonic tells Shadow he'll leave Mr. Tinker in the village after figuring out what Eggman Land means. That's when Shadow realizes their latest kerfluffle was a distraction. He does a series of what I'm assuming are Chaos Control teleports back to the village. He confronts Mr. Tinker, who's hiding behind his makeshift barricade from last time, and demands to see this Eggman Land now. Mr. Tinker leads them to the barn, and we get our answer. Eggman Land is, or will be, a small amusement park for the kids, made up of what appears to be salvaged Badniks, or rides that look like Badniks. Yeah, that doesn't look ominous at all. With that, Shadow and Rouge leave. Rouge even lets the Chaotix take credit for this gig. That's nice of her. Mr. Tinker explains the idea for Eggman Land just came to him, which to Sonic might mean at some point his memory could return. Still, Sonic and Mr. Tinker say their goodbyes, and the Hedgehog will make repeated visits from time to time. Meanwhile, the Mastermind's ready to make his next move. I've already said spoilers earlier, but this is a biggie. We're about to finally see who this Mastermind really is. You ready? The Mastermind we've been following since issue 1 is Dr. Eggman. Wait, what? Okay, this probably threw everyone for a loop when they saw this image at the end. I admit, it caught me off guard as well, at first. After thinking about it some more, I have some theories. First, Mastermind Eggman is the real Eggman, and Mr. Tinker is a fake. Remember, Mr. Tinker had phantom ruby cubes around him when he first popped into the village, and these are usually associated with illusions. If that's the case, then what was the point of keeping the Mastermind hidden for the past few issues? And was Mr. Tinker there to throw everyone off the scent? Likewise, could Mastermind Eggman be the illusion and Mr. Tinker the real Eggman with amnesia? And this is actually the work of another villain in the shadows? Possibly. Second, and this is related to a comment I said last issue, Eggman has been split into two, Mastermind Eggman and the kind Mr. Tinker. Yeah, that's a bit doubtful. Third, and the more likely option, Mr. Tinker is the real Eggman with amnesia, and Mastermind Eggman is another villain in disguise. Two villains in the games have pulled this trick for their own ends, Metal Sonic in Sonic Heroes, and Eggman Nega in the Sonic Rival series. There are hints to being one or the other. For Metal Sonic, the word bubbles from the past Mastermind appearances have a bluish-purplish tint, and in this issue, he's rendezvousing with the Egg Fleet. What did Metal Sonic use to try and take over the world in Sonic Heroes? For Eggman Nega, there's Blaze. If you go back to the events of issue 4, she's in Sonic's world because something very bad is about to happen, and Eggman Nega at times likes to push his plans far beyond what even Eggman would do. Now, it could also be another villain assuming Eggman's form. What I'm saying is, don't take this ending at face value. Let's move on to Shadow and Rouge. They're here to continue the "we're introducing familiar Sega characters per issue" thing, though technically they showed up at the end of the previous issue, and to show some of their personality in this continuity. Shadow, as Rouge notes, is not one to hold back, especially in regards to Eggman. He could still be guilty of working with him. Sonic Adventure 2 was mentioned after all. It took Sonic reminding him about his own misdeeds to calm Shadow enough not to intimidate Mr. Tinker too much. And I'll expand upon this and Sonic soon. On a related note, Rouge knows about what Shadow may or may not do to Eggman and those in between, so she set things up to mitigate the conflict. It looked like it worked as Shadow leaves after being shown Mr. Tinker's Eggman Land and left Mr. Tinker be. The point is, she's thinking long term on how to handle the situation with regards to Shadow. During the conflict with Shadow, Sonic's view of the Mr. Tinker situation is one of optimism. Despite Eggman's repeated world-conquering schemes, not to mention capturing him for a time, Sonic thinks he's been neutralized. Sort of. I admit, Sonic can be too optimistic at times. Comparing Shadow to Eggman, Shadow has done a few despicable acts, and a lot of them seem to be misguided, but it's nothing compared to Eggman. And remember, the events of Sonic Forces just recently happened, i.e. Eggman actually conquered the world. Not to mention both have/had a case of amnesia. If Shadow can regain his memory, so could Eggman. To be fair, Sonic will make frequent visits to make sure Mr. Tinker remains Mr. Tinker. And then we have the Chaotix, which, they're getting paid, I guess. To wrap this up, I enjoyed the issue in terms of world building and character interactions once again, not to mention the final page. Tracy Yardley's penciling is still great, but I admit it is off at a few places, though it could be Jim Amash's inks at times. I am not bothered by what little happened plot-wise because it's building up to something. I will be upset if the payoff is not satisfactory. For now, I'm going along for the ride. Next time, as the final page indicates, we may get answers to why there are two Eggmen. Will it involve what I said earlier, or something so ridiculous no one saw it coming? We'll find out when we look at issue 7. It seems Shadow the Hedgehog the game happened in this continuity as well. I don't even want to think about all the possible pathways that actually happened.